There are a great range of military options available to policymakers of the United States. You have large conventional forces that go up against armies on the other side. You can use missile strikes, airstrikes, a combination of the two. You can use ships to signal presence. A great example is our aircraft carriers signaling to the rest of the world that the United States will keep the seas open for business. And then you have things like space and missiles and special operations raids. On the very high destructive end, and we do have nuclear weapons. Some of the things that we use military force to do include ousting a regime that is hostile to either the American government or maybe to its own people. We also use military force to attack terrorist organizations. We use military force to deter people from doing bad things. And that's really important because often the threat of force is much more effective than actually using force. We also have a presence around the world with military force, and that serves to assure our allies and to dissuade our possible adversaries.
We're now at a moment of history when there's only one truly great power, which is the United States. And let me just be clear, even though the United States is great, there's still limits to what the United States can accomplish. And then there's a number of medium-sized powers out there: China, Japan, India, Russia, Europe. But this is a somewhat uncharacteristic moment in history where the United States is, if you will, first among unequals.
When we talk about the impact of public opinion on foreign policy, it matters whether we're talking about broad American public or whether we're talking about subgroups. The overall American public very seldom directly guides foreign policy. The overall public tends to have two indirect effects. The first is it can constrain the freedom of maneuver that presidents or Congress can have. The second is that public opinion tends to shape or influence what priority policymakers give foreign policy. Now, when you think of subgroups of the public, lobbies or special interest groups, they can often have a significant impact on foreign policy. They can do so because they're knowledgeable, they're highly motivated, and often they act in number. It's important to keep in mind that public opinion can shift dramatically. That poses a real challenge to policymakers. The fact that the public is with the president or with Congress when a policy is enacted doesn't mean they will be with the president or Congress when the policy goes bad. Many Americans supported the Iraq War when it began in 2003. By 2006, 2007, the public was much less enthusiastic. Control of Congress changed hands from Republicans to Democrats, in good part because of dissatisfaction among the American public about how the war was going. What you see is often also that American public opinion can have conflicting impulses, what we might call a double wish. The public wants two things, but they're in conflict with each other. An example came in 2014 with the Obama administration facing the threat of ISIS fighters or the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Many Americans were horrified to see that American hostages had been killed by ISIS forces and wanted something done. But by the same token, the American public was pretty clear it did not want to see American combat troops on the ground in Iraq, let alone in Syria. And so that sense of where the public was, wanting something done, but not wanting to put boots on the ground, really bedeviled the president's policy.